I've got this tea that smells like cough syrup. It
Ew.
really smells. It's like less strong cough syrup.
What does it taste like?
Less strong cough syrup.
Are you sure you didn't just make cough syrup? I mean, Dr. Pepper is basically just carbonated prune juice and cough syrup. So,
You're addicted to that. I wonder what that says about you as a person.
says my life's fallen out of control and I don't know how to get it back on track.
You are going
So I
to
hide my
community
pain in
college,
Dr.
which is
Pepper.
basically the same thing as... No, you're not going to community college. You're going to film school. So, it's even worse.
Film school in a community college. It's kind of like they're associates, but not the same college.
Yep. So, it's even worse.
Whatever, my college is cheap and I have to only drive like 40 minutes from my house, while as you have to drive like 20 hours every day. Yeah, your commute
drive,
from your house...
I have to drive 8,000 miles to get from here to Minneapolis, Tennessee.
Yeah. I thought it was in Maine.
No. Where did I get this wrong? I said it's in the Midwest, which means it's in Tennessee.
Oh, okay, Midwest. Alright, okay, alright.
Midwest, Tennessee. Does that make any sense?
You're Midwest. Yes. Midwest, Kansas.
Of course.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, how did that barbecue go?
It got real political real quickly.
That's what happens when you hang out with your parents and their friends.
Yeah, no. None of my friends, they were all blood relatives. So every year, basically what happens is that we go to, my dad's mom lives here in New Mexico with us.
Yeah.
So every year they'll cut all of my family come to us in Arizona to get together, right?
Yeah.
So my cousins from Germany are here this year. They don't come every year. My aunt and uncle from New Jersey are here. Unfortunately, my uncle from California isn't, but oh well. So all of them are here. They're all the siblings. Like, all of my dad's siblings are here. And of course, my very liberal aunt and my uncle from Germany got into a debate with my dad about politics. Said, no, they're the intolerant ones. No, both people are intolerant. No, they're the intolerant ones. While in the other room, my mom and my uncle from, my uncle and my mom, my uncle from New Jersey, my mom, and my brother started talking about Alex Jones. You know, friggin' frogs are gay, Alex Jones. So then I just went and helped my aunt and uncle, my aunts wash dishes.
That sounds like quite a trial.
It was interesting.
I don't think I'd have the patience.
Well, here's the thing. I actually somewhat care and are interested about politics. It's just that I can't stand closed-mindedness, so that kind of bugs me a little bit.
And your parents are, they're of a different camp of thinking than you.
My mom is.
In a way.
My dad's about where I am politically.
So is there, like, friction between the two of them?
Nah, my dad doesn't... Here's the thing. My parents are interesting because my mom is a Christian. She's a Protestant. My dad is agnostic at the very least, or atheist. He was grown up Catholic, but he doesn't go to church, and they get along fine.
Huh.
My mom's very conservative.
I think that's
my dad's more in the middle.
Nice.
They get along. They've been married to each other for more than 20 years. They're getting on 30 now. They've never had any problems. They have a great marriage, but they aren't the same religiously or politically. I don't get it, but it works for them.
Hey, well, sometimes you don't have to line up exactly and have every single thing in common. I've tried that, and that was weird. It's good when you have things in common but aren't the same person, basically, because then all of your own self-projected flaws are present in them, so you start to resent them a little, and vice versa.
So yeah.
Try and find the middle ground between dating a clone of yourself and dating someone who has absolutely nothing to talk to you about.
So how was that stream?
Super easy.
How did that go?
The stream was awesome. This is the first time I'm talking about it. Outside of some tweets.
So talk about it. Talk about your thoughts about it. Talk about your experiences with it, and then I have something to tell about you with the stream that might make you laugh.
Okay. It was the first time we'd ever done it. We weren't exactly planning for it to have the large turnout that it did. I think the stream at this point has 7,000 or 8,000 views now. It peaked at
around 200 live viewers, didn't it?
Yeah, it was about 200 live viewers, and then it's just been climbing in views since we shut it down. People are just going back.
I don't have time to watch 4 hours of you aimlessly playing video games and answering fan questions. I don't have the time for that.
There was a lot of silly shenanigans, and it got a little wacky more than one time. Just because someone in the chat would say something really silly and weird and a little incendiary, and it would get a reaction. Like someone asked, because it's a stream, of course, they always end up after long enough asking the weirdest questions. So someone asked Josh if he thought traps were gay, and he got really heated and passionate about that. And,
so maybe this would be the best time to tell you that I kind of screwed with your stream a little bit. Do you want to know how?
How?
I have a couple of different email accounts that I use. So I logged into one of my other email accounts, one of my non-cautiously realistic accounts, and I commented on the stream as incognito, as somebody else.
Oh.
You answered a surprising amount of my questions. You did.
Really? That's funny. I did not. That's pretty cool.
So I went in.
So which questions did you ask?
I don't remember exactly. I remember asking where you live, and I kept pressing you. Where do you live? Where do you live? To try and get you to reveal where you live. I kept at the end. I was shit posting for Ant-Man 2.
Okay.
I kept asking Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man 2. So yeah.
I don't think Josh, because the thing was I was sitting 4 feet away from the laptop that we were using to stream, so it was mostly just Josh looking through the comments. So occasionally when I stood up to go get something from the desk, I would walk over and see it. But for the most part, I was over just sitting over there letting him dictate questions to me. So if I'm sure at one point he read off a couple of them, and I'd have to go through and just try and figure out which ones were you now.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun because you didn't.
So you just fucking around, just okay. Did you ask any super embarrassing, horrible questions that I did answer?
Most of the weird questions that I asked you didn't answer.
Okay. Was probably because Josh was trying to run as a sort of filter for it. So if he saw something pretty bizarre, he'd probably just I'm not gonna dictate that one, huh?
So
and it,
that was a lot of fun, though. I was screwing with your stream. That was fun.
Well, hope you do it for the next one.
Now that you know the secret, if you're watching this, go back and see through the stream and see if you can tell who I was.
I don't think they'll be able to go look through the chat again, sadly, because that
the chat doesn't say
get archived.
So, but
I wish it did.
I did ask a couple of questions, and you answered them. You answered a surprising amount of questions, like this, like a lot more than the average. Like I also asked you what you thought of Doctor Who.
I'm sure I answered with I talk about it on the podcast.
I'm sure you did.
There was a couple of ones where, because no one actually listens to this. So there was a lot of ones where they're like, hey, what happened to this? Or, hey, how did this go? Or, hey, what do you think of this? And it's like all stuff I talked about. Like, specifically, like 5 or 6 of them were stuff I talked about the podcast that came out like the week before. So
maybe we could try for the next anniversary, the next one on your channel. We could try this and see if it works. We could live stream the podcast and then just do it live and then answer some of your questions and then end it.
We
could try.
Yeah, that would probably be a really good way to get fan questions too. I'm open to the idea.
Yeah. We could try it and see how
it works. All right, let's
it'll probably be
let's try that for which number would that be?
13.
So 13? Okay.
It goes by 4.
I thought it was every fifth one.
It's every 4th one. So you did 1, and then I did 2, 3, and 4, and then you did 5, and I did 6, 7, and 8, and then you did 9, and then this is 10. This is 11, and then it'll be 12.
Okay.
And then it'll be 13.
All right, so I have 2 weeks to figure out OBS.
Yeah.
Because we streamed it from Josh's laptop because he has better hardware. He has a really tough, kick-ass gaming PC that's specifically really good at just processing multiple things at once.
I have a good gaming PC too. You can know that it's a gaming PC because the keyboard outline and the speaker outline and the logo are in red.
Oh yeah, that's how you know. Does it have red lights? No, it'd have blue lights on it. That's how you know it's a gaming PC. It has the blue lights.
Yep. It's not an Alienware, it's a Dell, but it's a pretty decent upmarket Dell. I paid way too much for it.
It's a extraterrestrial ware. The off-brand.
Yeah, it's like Big K Cola is to Pepsi and Coke what ET Ware is to Alienware.
ET-ware is a better name. You're talented at this. You should work at an ad agency. So the stream was really fun. We just played a whole bunch of random games. I didn't expect it to take off the way it did. I honestly thought from how we started it that it was going to only last 20 minutes at most.
I think people like the interactive side of YouTube stuff, and it's not just you. Sometimes Stoned Gremlin, the Cinema Snob people, they've started live streaming midnight screenings where they talk about a movie live, and that's kind of cool.
That's cool.
It's kind of like a live Couch Potatoes in a car.
That's neat.
So
what was interesting about it is that I wasn't expecting so many people to just hop in because it was just a test.
Late at night,
and
too.
It was also we started at 9 o'clock, but then tons of people just hopped in, and some people even donated, which I didn't even know you
can do that in YouTube streams, and I'm not sure if you can do that on Twitch.
I think you can on Twitch. It's just a different system. But I was really shocked when Josh was like, "Oh, you got a donation." I was like, you can do that?" And I checked over, and it said someone sent $2.
Somebody sent $10.
Super nice. The biggest one of the night was $10.
Cool.
I think we say his name in the stream. We were like, "Thank you," and then his account name. That was
thank you.
Really
account
awesome
name here.
Yeah, what we're working on right now is because I wanted to do a 30,000 special.
Since you're 31 now.
Spider-Man PS1. Oh yeah, 31,000, I guess. Just because it takes so long to do this stuff. So we were gonna stream all of Spider-Man PlayStation 1 because it's a relatively short game. I can beat it in a couple hours max, and we're also starting early enough in the day. So even if I'm really slow about it, I probably won't be. But we're just gonna set up a day for that. Probably advertise it tomorrow, and then it'll run.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
I think that would be.
We were originally gonna do Tuesday, but Josh has work.
So I think that'd be cool because first ever live stream, 7,000 views, talking about nothing, subject to change 9, 3,000 views. So if we do it live, we'd get a lot more views. Hopefully.
I mean, it would also be just because like the interactivity would probably make it better. Right now, it's just a lot of people listening to us ramble.
Yeah. I think it was a cool experiment, and let me know if you want me to prank your next comment section.
Oh yeah, do it. Just show up there and just start asking nothing but questions related to porn. Because there are a couple people like that too. I didn't ask any of the porn
questions. Actually, that wasn't me. That was just your audience.
You know what was weird is there was never any like malice towards any of the comments. Even like some that said really fucked up stuff. You're just like, that's what happens when you stream.
I said
people
some
say
of
weird stuff.
I said some pretty weird stuff. I'm
okay.
not. I said like, I don't remember. I think.
I know one of them was a little weird and off-putting, but at the same time, I just kind of like, whatever. Someone said, "Can I date your sexy ex-girlfriend goth lady or something?" And I was like,
you have to ask her.
Yeah, don't ask me, man. Oh yeah, I also had to answer that question because people were like, "Are you and Iona still dating?" And I had to very awkwardly say no.
It's awkward to answer like publicly about private relationship stuff. So,
yeah, because they just don't get like the whole background of things that happen and what people say, and it's just, like I'm sure they're all immediately jumping to conclusions like, oh, I'm sure there was like a whole
wait, you're almost
backstory.
At 32 now. You're 31,894.
Really? Damn.
So good job, you. I'm at 620. So yay.
Good work.
But if you look
past 600,
but I'm proud of my success because I like to sometimes go back through my Twitter and look through because I posted periodically the pictures of the subscribers that I have, and like I went back to like December of last year and I had like 72. So year over like in about like 8 to 10 months I've gotten 500 subscribers. So that's success I can be proud of.
Yeah, well, it's an exponential thing. I mean, it really was
so
like
I got
just
500 on June 14th.
Trying to get to like.
So in about 2 months, I've gotten over 100 subscribers.
I actually checked it, and this time last year, because I posted it on Facebook, I was like, "Hey, check it out!" Like I showed the screenshot of it, and I looked at it, and I was like, "Wow." Because it was, here's your post from 1 year ago. 1 year ago exactly, I hit 5,000. So now I'm at like 32,000. Yeah, you see, it runs quick it's just
that initial like for you guys who are starting out on your YouTube channels and you have like 12 subscribers. I get it. I hate that. It's so demoralizing to put all of your work into these videos and to just feel like nobody cares. But everybody's like that at start, so you're gonna have to just push through that initial ambivalence.
You gotta push through the awkward years, the early phase, and just
keep going.
Get there. Well, that's something cool. It's just like everyone at one point had only one. I that's something that's very inspiring to me, is that it's a system where it's just like they didn't buy that. They didn't get that for free. They had to work for it. It took time, but everyone started at ground zero the same as we did. Mm-hmm. And it runs at different rates. It's different for everyone who's like really working. But as long as you're putting out quality content, as long as you're passionate,
some people just get lucky and hit the zeitgeist and just hit the top instantly. But
oh yeah, like just maybe like a bigger channel sees them and is like, hey, everyone go check out this channel
maybe
that
it's
does
just
these kinds
whatever's
of videos.
popular at the time. They make what's cool.
Yeah. Just like
or they do
accidentally
something different
like
that,
kind of
that people like.
Yeah. It could be any number of things, really. It's not like
I think that we're done talking about that. I have a cool thing that we can talk about. So,
okay.
You've probably heard of this already, but like on Twitter, the other day I posted some pictures of a comic book shop that I went to in Pueblo, and this is kind of cool, because in case you don't know, we live in Colorado. In case you don't know,
yes. You're gonna live in a different
I'm gonna live in
state,
Wisconsin
because
of college. And
yeah, Milwaukee.
Yeah, I'll be next to Red Letter Media in the dorm rooms, so that'll be nice.
Oh yeah.
And so I went down to Pueblo this weekend with my family, because my family's in town. We're doing all the touristy stuff that you don't do when you're in a state normally, but you do when your family's there. And of course, my family grew up in Pueblo because my grandfather worked at CF&I back when there was actually a steel mill down there. So they grew up down there in that sort of blue-collar town. And I went down there, and it's kind of a cool place to go to. Because, like, where we are in the Fort Collins, Colorado Springs metro area, it's...
I wish you would stop making it easier to narrow down. They're gonna go find a background item from one of the videos and then be able to track our location.
We already admitted that we live in Colorado. So it's either we live along the Front Range or nothing. Because clearly we don't live in the mountains or in the Kansas part of the state, so we obviously live in the
you and I have our houses like an hour drive apart, basically. So, like,
here, there's a lot of urban sprawl, and I can drive for an hour, and I'm still in the city. But, like, Pueblo, it's a city of 100,000 people, but there's not that urban sprawl around it, so you can drive for 30 minutes outside of the city, and you're in cornfields. So that's kind of cool.
Yes.
And, of course, they had...
It's kind of where you start finding where the Kansas starts.
And, Pueblo is more of a blue-collar town anyway. But it's cool, because I went to this comic book shop called Outer Limits Comics.
You showed me the pictures, like, you texted them to me and then put them on Twitter shortly after. And it had all this, like, superhero graffiti art on the outside that looks super cool.
Sort of like a brick building, but it has all this sort of, like, old... Steve Ditko, what's the other one? Jack Kirby style artwork on the outside, and it's kind of just a cool place to go to, and I thought it was a fun place, because, like, I didn't want to go to a corporate store, but this is clearly, like, owned by a couple of comic book geeks or something, because there was this guy over the countertop, who my dad was talking to me, because he was a comic book reader back in the day, about Jack Kirby and his artwork. And, of course, the guy started listening to his conversation, and he pulled, like, these really old comic books outside under the desk from under the glass panel, and you could tell that they were pretty nice, because they were covered in plastic, and they were marked with, like, $70 on it or something, and they were, like, Jack Kirby comic books that he did for DC in the 70s, and that was really cool, because we had a conversation with this guy about Jack Kirby. Because he...
Yeah. That actually, it's cool when you can find an old issue like that's worth like $70. That must be really good.
And he talked to us about how he met Jack Kirby at all the convention centers, and he got some things signed from him, and that was that's kind of the cool part about being a comic book fan.
Oh, that's absolutely like the best part is
like
the
meeting
culture
those guys.
And just the fandom. Yeah, well, it's because it's just so long-reaching. It's been around for nearly 100 years.
Grew up in the 60s and read Jack Kirby, and then you grew up in the 2000s and read JMS.
Exactly, yeah. You get all these new comic creators over time. Everyone has like their, here's my definitive comic run that I grew up with. there's also something cool about being able to like pass it down from generation to generation. You know, like my dad was
you could say that
pretty into this stuff, and I've inherited almost all of his comics.
That visiting this sort of like hole in the wall shop in Pueblo, Colorado, gave me a little bit more of an appreciation for comic books more than I did already. So that was a cool experience to go there and to just view all these comic books and buy stuff. And of course, this is the punchline to this whole story. I went to a comic book shop, talked about Jack Kirby, and then I bought a Rob Liefeld book.
Oh. Talked about like one of the greatest comic artists who ever lived. And
I
then bought the other thing.
I bought 4 issues of Bloodpool.
Yeah,
I bought 4 issues because they were all in a.
Was it like
no,
big
they were all in
volume
like
thing?
a package
like
together. It was a package deal.
Yeah, like they have these kind of just, let's put it in like the kind of plastic you'd wrap around an old like plate of leftovers and then just wrap it all together and then.
To my credit,
here it is.
I did also buy a Invader Zim comic book. I love the Invader Zim comic book. I gave you some.
I have, you gave me the first 2 volumes?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. I still have to look over them. It's like what I was telling people in the stream, is that I have so many comics I'm reading all the time that when I get a new one or I get suggested a new one, it gets kind of added to like the backlog of a list because I have to just get through the stuff I was already reading. I can't jump back and forth.
Is absolutely awful. It's first of all, it starts off by shamelessly promoting another comic book.
Was it like, hey, go check out the newest issue of like
this
Youngblood?
Blows. Join Youngblood, they said. Oh wait, it was canceled, and now we're out on our butts. And then it says in the bottom, see extreme sacrifice in yet recent issues of Team Youngblood E on the bottom. So it starts out with shameless promotion of another comic book arc to understand what the hell is going on in this one. And then, of course, even when this comic book is doing its own thing, sometimes the art is just so utterly bad that I have no idea what the hell is going on.
Do you have confirmation that it is indeed Liefeld, or
it is created by Liefeld? Writer Joe Duffy, but he didn't. He wasn't the penciler or the colorist or the inker. But it's got all of the Liefeld trademarks, even though it wasn't written or drawn by him.
You know what's weird is that there's also like people who were inspired by Liefeld, like they started drawing based on like every generation has like their guy that they started using. I feel like the current one is a lot of people try to draw like Mark Bagley because Ultimate Spider-Man is such a hit. Like even after it was ended. But like back in the 90s, it was either we have to draw like Todd McFarlane or we have to draw like Rob Liefeld.
It was,
and everyone learned how to draw
got all the Liefeld
from those
trademarks.
2 guys.
It's got horrifically proportioned women whose legs are the distance from their knee to their butt is the same distance as the distance from their butt to their head. And of course there's women who are bending so outrageously to show off their butt and their boobs at the same time that they've got broken spines. And of course there's horrifically muscled men. And there was one hilarious issue. The opening of the issue is these 2 guys jogging at night. One of them is shirtless. The other one's got a like a wife beater sort of what do you call it? Opened
like a
sleeveless
V-neck,
and low cut. One of those. He's got one of those shirts on.
I get you.
And then it's the most tank top.
Tank top.
He's got so it is the most unintentionally homoerotic thing ever, because both of them have got huge wedgie action going on, and then they're just running together, and of course the guy shirtless is wearing short shorts as well. So it's the most hilariously
Of course.
homoerotic
Why would you wear
thing
anything
ever.
else?
And I don't think that
Why would you wear anything
ever,
else?
and I don't think that the artists or the writers were aware of this, and it's hilarious. So it's like, why are you just? It's at night. It's cool. Why are you wearing short shorts and nothing else?
Well, we need to make sure the
Muscular
people
he is.
can see how fantastic our asses are
and it's
at
not
night.
even like ordinary like jean shorts. These are have got serious wedgie action going on. Like you can see the
get really in
definition
there.
of their cheeks, even though it doesn't make any sense for that to happen when you're wearing jeans. This is utterly amazing.
Well, you know, the thing about the 90s is what... I think people focus a little too much on the women of the 90s. The men were just as bad, but for different reasons. They're... You know, I mean, the 90s invented, like, the hilarious girl costumes. I feel like superhero costumes for women weren't revealing until Todd and Rob were like, hey, you know what? Why shouldn't she just fight in a bikini?
From X-Men Apocalypse and all of that? It feels like every single woman is dressed like Psylocke, except that they took some scissors to her costume and cut out more exposed bits of skin.
It used to be like the worst you'd get is Elektra, and hers is basically like just
except
a swimsuit.
That these people
kind of
have swimsuits.
Like
it's either
leggings.
They have swimsuits that have gone through that have been seriously cut up by a pair of scissors, or it's they're wearing a sheet over their body and you can clearly see their nipples.
You know what also bothers me is they just like... This is a weird complaint. I feel like sometimes they just draw like really, really small coverings for nipples and just like don't put them in there. And you're like, here, it's PG-13. You can't see nipples. And it's like, dude, I don't think you know how like those look. You would be able to see so much of that, and also the angle at it's at would mean that's like on the bottom of it.
The funny thing about 90s artwork is that the guys were so hilariously over-muscled, and sometimes they were just as naked as the girls were. Other times they weren't. So it's more inconsistent. But sometimes that hyper-masculinization became a kind of a little bit unintentionally homoerotic, which I find kind of hilarious. Because, you know, Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld wanted to make the men so masculine that it came off as sort of a little, like, maybe they're a little bit too into how the guys look.
Like, these muscles are upsettingly big. This person would have a hard time doing his normal daily routine because he can't fit inside a car.
My favorite thing
because
is
he is so jacked.
There is a guy of Bloodpool #1. There is a guy who has shoulder pads on his knees. It's got all the right... This cover has got all the Liefeld trademarks. Enormous guns, pouches everywhere, even just on your exposed thigh, you got pouches. You have hair only going up. You have things on the side of a guy's head to prevent you from having to draw hair that isn't from the top of the head. You have women who basically wear underwear and nothing else and have broken spines. You have like a monster guy who's obviously a ripoff of The Thing, but dumber. He's also wearing a baseball cap.
Is it Bad Rock or some other ripoff of The Thing, but dumber?
It's not Bad Rock.
How do you... Okay, so is Bloodpool, like,
it's from what I'm getting, it's of the Youngblood team.
Great Lakes...
Form their own team.
Great Lakes Avengers, but for Youngblood, so it's like the rejects
So I'm going to tell you... I'm going to read off the names. So, the team's roster includes Rebel, Task, Soul, Silence, Wilder, and Fusion.
Wait, I noticed a P sound. Is Silence
P-S-I-L-E-N-C.
Like spelled with a P? Okay. As soon as you said it, I knew that's exactly how it was spelled. that name is clever.
My hilarious. So Rubble is of course the Thing ripoff, and he can take off his head and put it back on or whatever. Yabba
dabba doo.
Oh, of course.
Yabba dabba doo.
It's kind of just hilarious. So yeah.
By the way, you're talking about going to that comic shop reminded me of something.
The Fighting American?
About, a very deep memory. No. But, okay, I can't figure out how to segue. Basically, I had minor experience working in a comic shop, technically, because my aunt worked at one. Like, she's just as into, like, super into comics as I am. Like, she reads tons and tons of them. She works at Mile High Comics currently.
Yeah.
At, like, the help desk or whatever. But back in the old days, she used to work at this little, like, really small mom and pop comic shop that was, like, down the street from our house. That was just kind of, like, independently run and funded. And I would head in there, like, almost once a week, just checking out all the action figures and like looking through the books and talking to her, of course. And at one point, because I was so into it, my mom decided to try this like fun thing where she and she got my aunt in on it, where they were like, "Hey, do you just want a job there?" So they talked to the manager and were like, because I was like 5 years old. So they agreed to let me just, like, basically go behind the desk with a little name tag. And, of course, I was, like, 5. And I was just sitting on the shelf just grading comic books, like, putting the stickers on for, like, the issue quality. Like, this one's fine, this one's mint, this one's damaged. Like, that stuff on the packaging. Or I would, like, alphabetize shit because they're like, well, you know your ABCs, you can do that. Yeah, so I was just kind of, like, humming that while I was going through files. I was going through, like, comics and just putting them in bins.
We all had to sing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P.
H-I-K-L-M-N-O-P
Q.
It's Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but
as we all know, every little kid loves to sing, except I hated it.
It was because you hate art, but yeah, I and my mom, like, she brought me in there like once a week, basically. I think it was on Saturdays when she didn't have work, and I would just sit in there. And I think my favorite memory was I was just sitting around just talking about random stuff. And a couple of, like, people came in, like, strangers, and they were asking questions about comics, like, to my aunt, who was, like, 25 at the time. And I was able to answer some of them. Like someone was like, "Hey, whatever happened to Bucky?" And I was like, "Oh, he's the Winter Soldier now." I was like,
yeah,
because he got frozen. I knew things. I was able to participate. And that was really fun. And I kept thinking that it was like an official thing. I didn't know, because at the end of every day, my aunt would just give me $20 and be like, "Here you go, good day of work." And I thought it was a genuine job because I didn't know anything about, like, child labor laws. So I was just like fine with it. And didn't ask many questions because I was having so much fun. And then eventually my mom was like, "Hey, don't tell your cousins. They'll be super jealous. Don't tell them that you're getting paid to just hang out in this place all day." And what sucked is that, like, eventually when that comic shop closed down, I stopped doing it. But I never bothered to question that whole thing until, like, I think maybe 4 years ago, when I was 15, my mom was talking with me about it, and I was like, "Hey, do you remember when I worked at that comic shop?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, and I gave you $20 every week." And I was like, "Wait, that was you?" Like, I just never made the connection that was stupid and didn't make any sense. But that's probably one of the big things that really got me into comics, was that little experience. And that talking
That's
about your trip into one of them kind of reminded me of it.
Yeah, I think I saw this pop up a lot in the stream, and I don't think you talked about it. So let's have a little bit of an extended discussion. Favorite Marvel movie?
Okay.
So, I'm
favorite,
gonna say
like, Marvel
MCU,
Cinematic Universe movie?
We have to limit it to a certain extent.
Well, the ones that weren't MCU, like, there's a very thin list of really good ones in there.
I've got
like
a whole
maybe
retrospective for the
4.
X-Men comics, so we have to say. I have to save something from my own series, okay?
And I don't mean, like, the X-Men Fox series. I don't consider that, like... I mean, it's technically pre-MCU Marvel movies, but I'm talking about, like, Daredevil and Blade and Ghost Rider.
Because it began in 2000.
Well, I know it is pre-MCU technically, but I don't consider it one of those, like, shitty one-off movies that isn't its own universe, because it's still persisting today and it still has multiple movies in it.
Through all of the MCU movies. I've got a list up on my computer. Each of us give a quick, like 3-sentence review. Each of us give a 3-sentence review, and then after we've gone through the whole list, let's say what's our favorite. Sound good to you? Okay, so...
Yeah.
So I'll go through the list quickly, and then we'll do our reviews. So here is the movies that have been released so far. From Phase 1, we have Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, and the Avengers. For Phase 2, we have Iron Man 3, Thor 2, Captain America Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers 2, and Ant-Man. Phase 2 officially ends with Ant-Man, not Avengers 2. Phase 3, we have Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Spider-Man. Of course, movies that haven't yet come out in Phase 3 are Thor 3, Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man 2, Captain Marvel, and Avengers 3, Infinity War 2. But we're not going to talk about those because those haven't been released yet. Okay, so 3 sentences on Iron Man.
Yeah. Iron Man. It's good.
If that's all you want to say, that's all you want to say.
No, I'm okay. I'll
rewatch this.
Felt like it took itself seriously despite having a sillier character. Like, it actually really respected Iron Man and thought the story was good, because it is. And I feel like it was a sign of, like, comic movies maturing.
Keep it.
Because most of them before that would be made very cynically and not actually put in that kind of effort. And the reason the reason it kind of spawned this whole, like, universe is just because it actually managed to take itself seriously.
My thoughts on it are that it started out really well. It was something new. It was very character driven and very good, but in the ending it just kind of fizzled out and kind of bad. The climax was such an underwhelming mess, because, like, the script, if you didn't read behind the scenes on Iron Man, the script was kind of the development was kind of tight, and the filming, a lot of the dialogue was actually ad-libbed because they didn't have all the writing completely ready by the time they had to finish shoot. So yeah, the ending.
That's actually kind of horrible, but at least it was like less noticeable than other movies where they've done that. The ending was
terrible. I think it ended terribly, but overall it was pretty solid, and I liked how. I just
what was so bad about the ending?
Stopped. It didn't end. It just stopped. Especially that final fight. That final fight was terrible, but we have to keep it limited because we have to move on. I thought it was okay, but the ending was weak.
I disagree, but not because I think you're wrong, but I don't know.
Let's agree to disagree on that one. So, Incredible Hulk. 3-sentence review.
Not as bad as everyone seems to say it is. I don't know why everyone hates it. I think it's pretty cool, and I like Edward Norton in the role more than Mark Ruffalo.
Not as bad as everybody thinks it is, but not as good as everybody wants it to be.
What do you...
Just the fans in general.
At me?
Like, I'm saying that we deserve a better movie than this, but it was an improvement over the first one.
Okay, that's fair, because the first one was basically like an art house indie film.
And this one
featuring
tried
the Hulk.
to do it, but it just didn't quite get there. And that's all we could have to.
It tried to do it the Iron Man 1 style of like, all right, let's not fuck this up. Let's actually respect what we're doing. So it actually seemed to like
it was realistic and
treat
grounded,
the Hulk
but it
as
never
a
came alive.
a serious premise.
So let's move on.
I would agree with that.
Iron Man 2 3-sentence review.
Okay. Once again, why does everyone hate it? It's all right. I know the villain was a little underwhelming, I guess, but
why does everybody hate it and you like it? Okay.
Like what? I mean, it's not like my favorite movie ever. It's the same as Hulk, where it's like, yeah, it's not like super awesome, but at least it doesn't feel like really, really basic, trivial, we've seen this before MCU movie. You know, like a lot of focus was put on the villain.
My thoughts about Iron Man 2 is that it was it shows us why Marvel Studios is better than any other studio, because Paramount, with Iron Man 2, Paramount's really screwed with the production, and Jon Favreau really wanted to do more of a character-driven story on it, but they screwed with him and forced him to include all this stuff like Scarlett Johansson and all of that, and it was kind of a mess, but it had some good elements to it. And I think
they
that
still managed
the character
to pull out
development,
something
they tried
cool.
to give some character development to Tony Stark, and the new movies have just given up on that.
Well, because they were going to go for the demon in a bottle story.
They've given that up now, and I think that I
alcoholism.
appreciate that it still tried. Now, Thor. Surprisingly good as a comedy, and embarrassingly bad as a fantasy movie. Or an action movie.
How do you make Thor interesting? Make it a comedy. Throw in a bunch of like annoying side characters from the show Girls,
It's
whatever.
super funny.
Or Two Broke Girls.
It's really good in comedy, but it just doesn't really give us the sort of Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones fantasy feel that we all want from a Thor-style movie. And it wasn't sci-fi either, but so it was just kind of like, well, it was funny. That's about all I have to say.
It was a movie. It also, I think, it was a very safe movie in that they didn't want to make any like implications about religion. So they were just like, yeah, the Asgardians are all aliens. They're all aliens. It's fine. They're from space. They're space aliens. And they're just old.
They did Loki better than any other movie. Now, Captain America, surprisingly underrated. Better than Captain America 3.
I really like the first Captain America.
And a surprisingly good villain
for
a Marvel movie.
Red Skull wasn't bad. He, I mean, here's the thing, is I think a lot of people are like, well, the villains aren't good because you can't find them relatable or get behind their motive. I'm like, Red Skull's a Nazi. They didn't even fucking try to do that because it's impossible. You can't... He's just a cool bad guy. Yeah.
You don't have to make him likable. You don't have to make him interesting.
There's a lot of half measures.
Relatable. Just make him... No, you do have to make him interesting. You just don't have to make it relatable.
You make him... Yeah. You don't have to make him relatable, nor do you have to make his motive make a ton of sense. Because, again...
Just make him interesting.
With no face.
And Hugo Weaving... with nothing else, can play a good bad guy. Now, the Avengers. What do you think of the Avengers?
He's talented at that. I think that I love it because it's just a solid superhero movie, but I kind of hate it too because I feel like it became this standard for the MCU. Is like every movie tries to be exactly like it, and it was filmed in a very like it was filmed like a sitcom where a lot of it was just like
it just felt
really
like the actors
flat,
were just
basic
sort of
editing,
riffing on the set of the helicarrier.
Yeah, there was a lot of just standing around on the helicarrier, just like... And that's a way to build the character dynamics, yes, but there's a certain point where it just got, like... No one gives a shit about actually, like, doing the thing anymore. They're all just standing around arguing, and I am kind of had it up to here with superheroes arguing. I'm so goddamn sick of seeing superheroes fighting each other.
On its own...
run its course super hard.
I thought The Avengers... was a fun action movie with a really, really cool climax and some really, really good chemistry between the actors. And overall, this movie has a special place in my heart because I don't think I will ever have a movie experience that was just as special, as unique, as seeing superheroes talking to each other.
Well, there was something so magic about
for the first time. There was nothing like that, and it was amazing.
Because every time before that, it was like, okay, here's Batman. Batman's by himself. Here's Superman. Superman's by... Like, you never saw more than one superhero standing on screen
and
at the same time
so cool.
ever prior to that. And that was such a surreal experience after, like, 2 movies getting to know Iron Man, a movie with Thor, a movie with Cap,
together, and they all got a moment.
Together was bizarre.
Maybe 1 or 2 moments to just do something cool.
That's one thing I think is... Because I have some mixed opinions on the writing for that one. I think one of the pros is that it gives everyone a shining moment, but I think one of the cons is that every character has the same sense of humor as Spider-Man. Everyone is wisecracking and clever and making jokes. Like, no... Joss Whedon can't help himself. He can't control it. He can't stop it. He just keeps writing funny, clever dialogue, and he'll never stop.
We can't. We'll be here all day unless we move on. Okay. Iron Man 3. I didn't like this one.
All right.
I didn't like it. I thought...
It's not... Like,
it's
people
not
talk about it like it's Fant-Four-Stick. I don't think it's...
didn't like it.
No.
I thought the villain was bad. I hated the climax. I just thought it was kind of a mess in terms of writing. There were some really good moments and details, but it kind of didn't mesh together well together.
Yeah.
3 sentences.
No, okay. I think it was okay.
We need to be pithy.
3 sentences. Villain was like the first awful MCU villain.
It was what drew our attention
like, absolutely
to the bad
abysmal. Yes, like that was the one that like broke the camel's back. I think the idea of Tony Stark spending the majority of the movie without his suits makes sense. And here's why.
So I guess here's what we're saying about it. Good ideas, bad execution. Keep it down.
Because, like, okay, there's that line in Avengers. Yeah, okay. There's a line in Avengers where Captain America says, "Big man in a suit of armor, take that away." And what are you? That's a good basically idea. The premise of Iron Man 3 is what is he without his suits? And that was a cool idea, but they just flubbed the entire execution so hard. And it's really frustrating because Jon Favreau, who's a competent director and writer,
while Shane
is standing
Black
right
is
over there just playing an
all
extra.
Over, Iron Man.
Well, yeah, it's exactly Lethal Weapon. Like, there's a video that someone did where they point out how it's the same movie plot-wise.
He Lethal Weaponed
Lethal Weapon. Lethal Weapon
all
3.
over Iron Man
or Lethal Weapon 4.
I think that Shane Black can only make one movie, and it's Lethal Weapon. He can make it really well, but he can only make that one movie. So yeah, move on to Thor 3. Thor 2, The Dark World.
Thor 2.
Boring.
Thor 2,
really
the first
boring.
Extremely meh
I
Marvel
barely
movie.
remember watching it.
It's like, it's just a bunch of colors and images. I watched it like 3 times, and I still, for the life of me,
I only
can't
remember
what
him
the
because
villain
he's
looks
played
like.
by
like
one of the
I know
doctors.
his name is Malekith.
And he's played by Christopher
I know the
Eccleston.
character's name is Malekith, right?
All I remember is that
like
he's
a white
played
elf
by
person or something.
The Doctor. I just keep thinking of the
For
line.
some reason, part of the visuals of this movie in my brain are getting confused with Hellboy
where he
2.
says, "But you've got no, you can't be an alien. But you've got a northern accent. Lots of planets have got a north. Lots of planets have got a north." And I love that. That's great. So let's move on. I don't think we have anything else to say about it. It's just boring.
Thor 3 is just the most forgettable
about
thing.
it. The villain is boring. Thor's boring in it. He's not funny. Loki is boring in it. I didn't even care that Thor's mom died.
I think Loki's... Of all of the things in that movie, I think Loki is the only one that
at least he had a character
passable, because at least he seemed like he was having a good time.
He's doing fun stuff.
Because he's hopping around, being goofy. He's pretending to be Captain America.
Everything else was just
like, there was some
boring,
fun stuff.
and the director would go on to ruin Terminator with Genesis as well. Now, let's move on to a good one. Captain America Winter Soldier. My second favorite Marvel movie after the Avengers. Really good spy movie that has superheroes in it. Good action scenes, good plot. They actually have some character development for Captain America. So I think if you look at it critically, it's a better movie than Winter Soldier, but I just can't... It's just not going to have the same magic that the Avengers is going to have, but on its own, it's a really good movie.
Okay, so Captain America Winter Soldier, I think... I feel like it was the movie that officially justified Captain America's character. Like, you could look at him and generally think he's really silly.
You made him
just like...
He made him a
really
real person.
Bullshit character.
It made him a real person.
If you don't read the comics, I mean.
And it had a fun villain. It had one of the best car chases you've seen in years. I think the car chase with Nick Fury in the SUV is just great.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was awesome. Hold on. I'm working on something.
So I think,
while
unless you have anything else to say about Captain America,
I'm trying to put together the thumbnail for a video right now.
Really good.
Captain America Winter Soldier is fantastic, and it's one of the best of the whole series, and it was like a breath of fresh air.
No. We're
I think
Guardians
we skipped
next.
over Guardians.
Because Captain America came out in April of 2014, Guardians of the Galaxy, August 2014. Guardians of the Galaxy, I enjoyed it for what it was, but I got really annoyed at how overhyped it was. It's just like the people who are saying, "Oh, Marvel can do anything. Oh, they did a talking tree, and look how ridiculous it is." That's the thing that I hated. I enjoyed it for it being sort of like a Valerian style B sci-fi movie with some fun characters and some fun action, but that's all I look at it as.
Yeah, I think I enjoy it because it's I enjoy it because I really like Super. I was a big fan of James Gunn's stuff prior to that, and it was really cool because I didn't know he was attached to it until like after I had watched it. I was like, oh, that makes sense. I think I have mixed feelings on it in that it is very much about the jokes, It's one of the most comedy-heavy movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It was cool,
but at the same time, it also has so much additional creativity.
Superhero movie, but it has its flaws in that it's not very character-driven, and the villain is the worst. I feel so sorry for Lee Pace because he's a good actor, but the villain is terrible. Now let's move on to Avengers Ultron. Avengers Age of Ultron. Here's what I say. It took
Avengers
all
Age
of
of
the
Ultron.
goodwill that Marvel had earned in 2014 with the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy and flushed it down the toilet.
I feel
know
like
if Joss Whedon
I don't know
wrote a
who to
bad
blame
script,
for it,
or if Kevin Feige made him chop up his movie into pieces, but otherwise it was just kind of meandering, boring, and lifeless. All the excitement and magic that was in the first Avengers movie was gone. The best...
because it just felt like a movie that was overstuffed with a billion things,
when the characters
and it
were
didn't
just
have any
having
room
a
to
party,
breathe.
just talking and interacting. And when they actually had a plot and they actually tried to get things done and move the story forward, then it didn't work. I think that's all we have to say. It was just underwhelming and overstuffed, and it didn't really make sense on its own as a story. It felt like a chapter 1 of something else.
Well, okay, so from my point of view is I feel like Joss Whedon had like a really great script that for like a 4-hour movie, and then Marvel is like, dude, we have a lot of money going into this already. We can't have it be that long. Shave it down to the most important parts. And he's like, well, this
all the connective
doesn't need to
tissue
be in
is
there.
what
This
made the
doesn't
first film work.
Like, what about these parts with like letting him kind of off the chain is what helped the first movie. Because you get all these fun little character dynamics, and you get all this riffing, and you get all these iconic
and everything
lines
that people liked
that people
about
love
the first
to quote,
film was gone.
You know,
and all of the bad stuff from the first movie is amplified. That's about it. Ant-Man. Surprisingly good heist movie. Would have been better with Edgar Wright. It was a charming little movie with a fun lead character who felt more real and relatable than the rest of the MCU, and it was kind of cool to just have one sort of self-contained little story within the bigger story that also acknowledged that other stuff was happening in the universe. But I wish Edgar Wright would have stayed on the project, because if he'd been at this, then it would have been great. I like it for what it was, but I wish it could have been more. Anything else you have to add to that?
Well, I think it was really awesome just because it was so small and grounded. Like, all of the climax takes place. Like, let's go pull a heist in this one building. Instead of, like, let's fly to the other side of the universe and blow up a billion buildings and fight through, like... It just felt really toned down. It felt more like an actual comic book story, because if you read, like, a random issue of Ant-Man, it's probably like, let's go pull a heist on that building using our shrinking powers.
In the sky hole.
We have to stop Ultron from destroying the Earth.
It was small and grounded and very sort of, like, charming and down-to-earth, I'd say. It was kind of a very low-key, but, you know, it had its weaknesses, and I admit them. But I liked it for just being a sort of small genre piece that it was a superhero movie without the superhero tropes.
Yeah, it was nice to just have, like, here's a genre film with superhero just kind of, like, put into it. So, like, I think that's what's keeping the MCU alive is whenever they have a movie that's like, yeah, that felt like a blank kind of movie, but with a superhero skin on it, as opposed to just generic superhero movie. Like, when you make Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 again, but not good, and, like, really... Because that's like the gold standard, right? But if you just do that over and over, it gets, like, really obnoxious and hard to watch, and I think that's one of the reasons people hate,
Don't get
like,
Doctor Strange yet.
is because Doctor Strange is...
Civil War, Avengers 2.5. I didn't like it.
Civil War.
I felt like it was overstuffed, way too long, the plot was too complicated, and the villain made no sense. But that airport scene was amazing. I felt like everything was underwhelming except for the airport scene, and that was about it. Any other thoughts?
I don't know. I have, like, no opinion of Civil War. It feels like a movie I saw, and it happened, and I was like, yay, Spider-Man! And then there was a bunch of other stuff before and after that was just so uninteresting that I just have, like, it just, I didn't hate it. I absolutely don't hate it. If it's on TV, I'll turn it on. Like, sometimes I even go watch it on Netflix. It's just a movie it's just colors and explosions. Okay. Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's just like,
you don't hate it,
whatever.
You don't like it. Okay,
you know, I don't have any passion towards it.
I really liked having Benedict Cumberbatch and Mads Mikkelsen and Tilda Swinton in a superhero movie. All of these great actors in silly costumes. But the writing was kind of weak.
Hold on, let's pause for a moment. What, Phoenix?
Do you have a pillow I could borrow?
No. There's some in that tub, the Tupperware thing behind the couch.
He's talking to his family.
Please close my door.
I'm not going to edit that out.
No, you just edit that out. It's... Okay, hold on. Here, I'll tell you how to edit it. Ah! There, just look for that giant brick in the timeline, and then you could just edit right before that. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is one of the movies of the MCU. Like, it was
visually inventive. Because I find myself
often defending MCU movies.
Emotionally and story-wise, very inert and lifeless.
Okay. Every MCU movie prior to that, whenever someone said, geez, that's starting to get really generic and lame, and it feels like I've seen this before.
What about Doctor Strange?
I kept defending it, and I was like, no, you're crazy, man. You're just being a bastard. With Doctor Strange, he was like, nope, that's actually the most, like, generic, by the numbers, boring, bland MCU movie. It's so fucking obvious where all of the rewrites were put in. Because they got in one of the guys who works on Rick and Morty to do rewrites, because they're like, no, this movie, this movie's too serious and straightforward, and actually, has it takes itself serious. If you remember Iron Man 1, it wasn't full of jokes. It took itself seriously. That's what made all this happen.
Hey, come on.
So they're like, okay, hold on, let's put in a comedy cape sidekick that makes goofy slapstick action.
Let's just say everything visually was inventive and new and really cool, but the story and the characters, we'd seen it all before. Does that make sense? Do you think is anything to add to that?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
No,
I will say I had I had very low expectations for this movie. I was expecting a repeat of the first movie where it's just fun jokes, fun colors, silly action. Oh, look, more Groot. I am Groot. But it took all those silly elements and added a level of emotion and development that I didn't expect. It was a little bit long in the middle, but it was good. It was worth it at the end.
I think I agree with you in that it got a little long in the middle. I liked that every character had an arc. It seemed like there was
The
a
beginning-
lot of thought put into making sure every character
beginning
had
was
something
everything
going
that I
on
was
or some kind of
expecting it to
relationship with
be.
someone else.
And was kind of bad. But the beginning was bad, but the ending was good. So it improved as it went on. It was a lot more intimate and emotional than I expected it to be, and it was surprisingly good. Any other thoughts? Hello?
I think it was pretty great, actually. Well, okay. It felt at least not generic, because I thought it looked visually pretty good, unlike the rest, where they usually have like this really gray and blue color scheme, like every MCU movie.
It made
looks
me
that
feel
way.
more than I expected it to make me feel.
But it had emotions, and it had strong characters, and I feel like it, even though it wasn't the greatest, it still had a very strong focus on writing, and that's the thing I'll praise James Gunn for, is that he was like, I'm going to make sure that the writing is solid, and I'm not going to keep... It wasn't... All the jokes didn't feel forced. They just felt kind of more natural. While as in like something like, say, Doctor Strange, when suddenly there's just like someone falls over and goes boom moment, it's like, fuck you, you just added that to the script like 6 months before this came out. While as if something funny happened in Guardians of the Galaxy, it felt like that was intentional and was there all along, and it had a point.
It was better than I expected it to be. It was surprisingly emotional, but the middle was a little bit long, and the opening was a little bit bad. But boy, that ending was good. Spider-Man: Homecoming. You go first on this one, since it's your home territory.
Okay, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man guy.
Being that I am, like if this were an academic field, I would be one of the leading scientists of it, right? Like I'd be the guy you go to. Spider-Man: Homecoming is just okay. It's all right. Doesn't do anything I dislike, really. Doesn't do anything that pissed me off. But it didn't do anything that really impressed me. It was just... It didn't feel like a generic MCU movie.
Spider-Man movie.
It at least...
It did all the Spider-Man stuff, right? But it didn't do anything else right.
I mean, we've talked to death on the podcast about the ending, but... I think one thing that bothers me is that Spider-Man and his powers are very horribly utilized, and the action scenes are very dry and lame, and remind me of the action scenes from the 90s cartoon, where Spider-Man wasn't allowed to throw a punch. So it's like mostly just him dodging and falling into things, and then getting grabbed, and then thrown, and then dodging. Like, it's just so... hard to look at, because nothing really there's no bite to it. It's a very harmless, toothless like movie, and it gives me these sort of like Disney-ish vibes, just because I feel like it didn't want to cross any lines. It didn't want to have anything really it didn't want to have anything like overly dark. But the thing is that Spider-Man is for the most part a lighthearted story, but there's some fucked up stuff in there.
But nothing more than that. It wasn't anything new or interesting.
It was just...
Here, we give you everything that you wanted for.
It was like,
are you
here,
happy?
we did stuff that the other movies didn't try. Like, it was a lot of it was, here's stuff that the other 5 movies didn't try, but still feel like not too different. I think I do like the fact that the plot is very simplistic.
I liked a lot of the
ideas, very whittled down.
But I
gotta
like
stop this heist.
It needed something more. It needed an edge. It needed a bit more of a character arc, but yeah, whatever, we talked about that already. So, yeah. Now we've talked about all the MCU movies. What is your favorite? All the ones that have been released. So if
Of
you had
all of
all
them.
of the
Like,
MCU
the one I can
movies
watch,
in
like,
front of
over
you
and
right
over.
now, which one would you pick?
Iron Man 1.
That is a surprising pick.
Which is a surprising... Like, when you put it that way, if I had all of them in a stack and it was like, which one do you want to watch? Iron Man 1, I don't think it's like a nostalgia thing. I just think it's like, of all of them, it doesn't feel like a generic MCU movie.
It doesn't feel like an
a
MCU
generic
movie.
Iron Man movie. Like, it just feels... It was a completely new thing. That's the reason any of these other movies have exist or have been around long enough to stagnate, is because this one was something completely on a different other planet from anything coming out at the time. It was really groundbreaking,
That's a cool
actually,
pick.
in a weird way.
I'm
and
tempted
that to me
say
is special.
the Avengers for the very same reason. Like, you as a comic book reader have been seeing superheroes talk to each other for the longest time. But me, as a non-comic book reader, it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like superheroes talking to each other, and that's a magic and like a cinematic experience that I will never have again. And it's some of the one of the biggest, most iconic moments memories I'll ever have about going to the movies. And I want to say that, but I think when I'm thinking about a good movie that I just pop in and watch, I'd have to say Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Because I have a soft spot in my heart for spy movies.
I know that's a fair choice, is because that one's a solid movie.
I'm gonna pick the spy movie.
Yeah. That's one of the things also about Iron Man 1 is that you can't really define it as anything but, like, here's Iron Man as a movie. Like, it doesn't have, like, a genre. Like, you could just say it's a superhero movie. But even then, it kind of breaks conventions of that because he doesn't have a secret identity.
Movies. I love watching Mission Impossible. I love watching the first 3 Jason Bourne movies. I love James Bond.
That's also something that's really surprising, is that my
Kingsman.
favorite MCU movie is Iron Man, but he's like the character of all of Marvel Comics that I hate the most.
The first
Like, I
2
despise
movies.
Tony Stark,
Since
but I
then,
love
it's
him
gone
in those
downhill.
first 2 movies.
I liked how...
Because that was before he became
I
an
do admit
annoying,
that I really
unbearable
liked how
asshole like he is in the comics.
In the first 2 Iron Man movies, they took a completely unlikable jerk and made him a human.
Yeah.
His character arc...
Because, like, his character arc... Tony Stark's character arc is, I'm going from being a really self-absorbed jerk who loves himself and thinks everything I touch turns to gold, to being like a humble guy who's trying to use... He tries to figure out how to use his intelligence to help people, and then suddenly when he gets good enough at that and can use it as a thing of fame, he just goes straight on back to being like that guy that they established was a prick in the first 20 minutes.
That
like,
he realized...
the whole first... Yeah. So and then he just re-blows it.
I think that... I think your choice is a good choice. I'd say that's a cool decision. So I think now that that's done, now you know what we think of all Avengers movies. Now you can... Now, whenever somebody asks, what do you think of the MCU movies, you can point them here. When more MCU movies come out, we'll have to update this list. Yeah. But for now, this is what the list is.
So, Thor,
Ragnarok,
as soon as the next one comes, what is it? Is Thor? Thor Tooth?
It looks to be the best Thor movie.
I don't know.
Well,
I mean, you seem to be kind of, like, excited for it, but I feel like I'm just like... Didn't I see this already? It's called Guardians of the Galaxy.
With the other Thor movies, that it's very easy.
I guess I'm not looking at it as part of a trilogy. I'm looking at it as a general MCU film, and I just keep seeing like all the hallmarks that have gotten boring for me. Just once, I want one of these. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I have tried to explain this before. Is that the Marvel Universe is awesome. Because the comic universe. Because there is a lot of variety. These characters all coexist with each other. But they all have completely different stories. And completely different tones. And completely different visuals. Like Moon Knight is about a weirdo ex-mercenary serial killer that has like shades of being a psychological thriller because you can't tell if the deity he worships is like a genuine thing or something he's hallucinating. That's really dark and fucked up and creepy, and he cuts off bad guys' faces. That's in the same universe as Power Pack, which is a bunch of 10-year-old superheroes who argue about who gets to have like the last bowl of Fruit Loops and fights with like random bad guys robbing banks and travels through space. Those live like in the same city, but are way on the opposite ends of the spectrum. The problem I have with the MCU is that there's not this giant leap in tone between each thing. They generally all feel and look like the same movie. Because you can make a supercut of all of these movies strapped together, and they would play without their... Like, I get it. You have to make it so it's not jarring for the audience that, like, here's this dark, psychological, horrible Punisher movie, then here's this John Hughes movie with Spider-Man coming out. Like, you can't do that kind of leap in a movie. But that's my problem with it, is that it's putting everyone at the same level instead of letting them have their own unique feels and tones. It's trying to make them feel like one sort of single movie series
style for it, because I look at it as sort of like the bridge between the Avengers world and the Guardians world. How there's a little bit of both in there, and they're sort of laying the groundwork for Peter Quill and Tony Stark standing next to each other trading quips, because there's the biggest tonal difference is between the Guardians films and the rest of the MCU. So this is bridging that gap, and I'm okay with that.
Like, that's one of the reasons I like the Daredevil
Netflix
shows, or no, I mean the Netflix shows, like Daredevil and Jessica Jones, is because Marvel Netflix is way on the other side of the spectrum from goofy Spider-Man falls down and goes boom in a high school setting, and then Ned Leeds says, "I'm watching porn," and all the audience goes, "Oh my god, I can't believe you said that! Oh, it's a PG-13 movie."
I think there's a bigger tonal divide than you might think in the MCU. Because we've got a John Hughes movie in Spider-Man, and we've got the fantasy movies in, like, the Thor movies. We've got a spy movie in Captain America, and we've got a bit of a tonal difference there. It's bigger than you might think. It's just that the cinematography is so uniform that you kind of don't notice.
The cinematography is the worst part, but I feel like every time someone says, like, one of those annoying... I wish there was a term for it. There's just these jokes that are thrown in, and I'm no stranger to comedy or trying to lighten things up. I've made some jokes about some pretty dark topics in my videos. I think the first episode, the Spider-Man retrospective, has a joke about a rape victim, a joke about 9/11, and a joke about eating children. All in that first episode. I'm okay with adding in funny things to help, like, with serious topics. But it's just so toothless and silly and generic. It's just, it really comes down to Doctor Strange's cape pulls him in one direction and he falls down and goes boom, ha 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 ha. It's just so easy and lame and non-clever. It's really easy to just write in and throw in these jokes that get a reaction out of, like, the soccer moms and, like, the 8-year-olds. And it's just, it gets hard to watch after a while because you know what they're doing. You see the trick. You're like, this is in there to just because it works, you know? When you have that moment in Spider-Man 3, I remember Spider-Man 3. I feel like this is like the beginning of this. There's this really serious fight scene where Harry Osborn is trying to kill Peter Parker, and then it just cuts to this goofy slapstick comedy moment where he flings a web at the other end of an alley, and then Harry just trips on it. It makes a cartoon like noise. Like the sound effect is really silly sounding. And he falls and hits his head on a dumpster, and the audience just lost their shit. And I feel like someone was like, okay, let's just put those in the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, but like every 5 minutes on a timer. Like you can just feel the setups and payoffs, or like the really, like Wong talking about listening to like Beyonce or whatever. Like, fuck that.
I think you hate Doctor Strange a lot more than you hate
I'm very passionate about how Doctor Strange is bad. I think Doctor Strange represents everything wrong with the MCU and everything that could potentially get worse about it.
So yeah, let's hope
if that makes sense.
Keep doing. You know, I think the really funny thing about the MCU is that every time you think they're gonna do something different, interesting, or unique, they don't. And every time you don't think they're going to do something cool, interesting, or unique, they do. Like, you think that, Edgar Wright left Ant-Man. They left Ant-Man. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be cliche. No, it was good. And then you go like, Avengers 2 is going to be great. It's going to be the best movie. Everybody's going to love it. Nope.
Nope.
So
It's always about playing with expectations. Every time you think you got a movie in the MCU pegged, like the second you see it, it always does something to throw you off.
I think that's it for this episode. We talked a lot about Spider-Man.
Okay, I think that's it for this episode. That was a long one. If you want to know what we think about the MCU, come see this episode from now on.
Later.